Gentleman yields back. Chair, thanks. The gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 5 minutes for questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Director Young, I want to thank you for being with us here today to answer our questions and try to provide some insight into the President's budget request. Before I talk about some of the budget things I want to talk about, I wanted to correct the record on something. I guess you'd stated to Representative Klein that the President would not sign a bill raising taxes on those making under $400,000. But President Biden has already signed a bill raising taxes on those making under $400,000. In fact, according to the Congressional Budget Office and the Joint Committee on Taxation, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act raised taxes on those under $400,000 by over $4 billion. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this letter from the Congressional Budget Office dated August 25th, 2022 to Ranking Member Kevin Brady and Ranking Member Jason Smith.
Without objection, so ordered.
It's not really a concern that some of my Republican colleagues have major concerns about the proposal we're talking about today, from the anti-growth tax increases to expanding the DC bureaucracies. There's a lot for us not to like in the budget. But I want to focus my questions on something that, at least outside the hearing, is something I think there's bipartisan support that's certainly growing, and that's namely addressing our fiscal crisis and where we are. Director Young, I'm sure you're aware that our country's borrowing roughly $95,000 a second, and that's more than the median income of an individual in Kansas, and for the household income. And so, in just literally 1 second, the federal debt increased $95,000. And Democrats and Republicans all agree this is dangerously unsustainable. And I'm part of a bipartisan group that's working to address this. And even some of my colleagues on the other side of the dais have talked about this devastating problem. Yet in the President's budget request, there's not really any meaningful way to address this crisis. Even worse, the President's proposed tax increases, which aren't even offsetting the new spending that he's proposing. And it seems like the plan is to have a continued deficit and continuing growing that debt. I know that sometimes in the DC doublespeak, it's easy to say that the President likes to talk about his deficit is reduced. In reality, though, just because you propose a large deficit that's less than a larger deficit that had been proposed before, that's not a cut. It still increases the debt. And in fact, our national debt's going to increase to $52.7 trillion in 10 years based on this budget from a already staggering $34.5 trillion. So can you help with us, help understand where the President's priority are on our fiscal health of the nation, and particularly why he didn't propose balancing the budget if we truly do have a strong economic recovery?
Congressman, one, I want to make sure we are not conflating deficit and debt. The President has, in fact, when he began, the deficits are over $1 trillion lower than when he began.
Yeah, but let's not confuse the COVID spending that Republicans and Democrats agreed to for that disaster. And when I look at, so if we take out COVID and we take out the extra spending there, and we just look for the next 10 years from what the President Biden has proposed, it actually is increasing the debt. So he's spending more money every year than he's bringing in.
Well, Congressman, from the amount that was being spent, outlays in the government when this President took office to now, there has been over $1 trillion of deficit reduction. I appreciate you don't want to count that base because we're in the middle of COVID, but just as you don't want to do that, I don't want people to forget where we were. And he led a successful vaccine campaign and ensured that we had one of the strongest economic recovery than any other major economy in this world.
Wow. He was the beneficiary of the Operation Warp Speed that President Trump put in place, and that started rolling out before President Biden came into office, and was actually helping make that economy get started. And I think we can all agree, even Alexander Hamilton brought up that the necessity for borrowing during a particular emergency cannot be doubted. But I'm just looking forward. I mean, over the next 10 years, the President looks and proposes increasing our debt instead of lowering our debt in what's supposedly strong economic times.
Yeah, in 5 seconds, I'll say, he has shown a path. I get there's disagreement on how we get there, by asking the wealthiest to pay more, showing a path to over $3 trillion of deficit reduction. And the risk is, you've asked me about a balanced budget, the risk is that programs like Social Security, like Medicare, like Medicaid, like the Affordable Care Act, those are where the government has most of its outlays. If you want to balance in a short amount of time, there's no other place to go but for those to come down.
Yeah, and I know my time's run out, but the debt does increase. That's the fact of the matter is President Biden's budget proposal is going to increase the debt over the next 10 years. And unfortunately, my time's run out. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.